My real world is changing because of the origin of the void law. Evan frowned as he processed Anastasia's words. Are you sure it's changing because of the origin of the void law, and not due to something else? Why are you asking that? Anastasia asked, confused. She then explained, your real world is currently integrating the origin of the void law released by your lost seal, which is causing the change. Other than the origin of the void law, I can't find any other reason for this transformation. Evan frowned even deeper upon hearing this. After a brief pause, he told Anastasia about the strange energy that had been brewing within the rune of evolution, the same energy that vanished when he successfully broke through to rank 4. Anastasia was surprised when she heard this. She was aware of the energy that had been forming within his rune of evolution, but she had never been able to sense it herself because the energy resided within the evolution space of the rune and only Evan had access to it. But now, Evan was telling her that the energy had disappeared, merging with his real world, and his world was changing due to the origin of the void law. This could only mean one thing. The energy that had been brewing within his rune of evolution was also the origin of the void law. But why? Evan muttered, deep in thought. I mean, why would the rune of evolution create the origin of the void law and evolve my real world? Anastasia rolled her eyes at his words. You said it yourself. It's the rune of evolution. Do you even understand what the word evolution means? Evan was momentarily stunned by her response. His expression turned even stranger. I know the rune of evolution is related to evolution, he said. But my question is, why the origin of the void law? When I broke through to mid-level rank 3, I didn't just have void conceptual energy within my core. That energy started brewing inside my rune of evolution, sure, but... He paused and narrowed his eyes. At the time, I also had shadow energy within my core. So shouldn't the rune of evolution have also brewed the origin of death law, life law, and soul law instead of just the origin of the void law? It might be because you broke through to rank 3 using the conceptual energy of void, Anastasia speculated, her expression thoughtful. If you had broken through using the conceptual energy of death, life, or soul, then the rune of evolution might have brewed the origin of those laws instead of the void law. This actually makes sense, Evan nodded, considering her words. Then, his curiosity piqued. So, can you tell me what kind of changes will occur in my real world because of this origin of the void law? And are there any actual benefits for me right now? How would I know? Anastasia gave him a blank look. It's my first time seeing something like this. How am I supposed to predict what is going to happen? It's not like I have the ability to see the future. Evan was speechless. So, you mean, for now, there are no benefits for me because of this origin of the void law? I never said that, Anastasia corrected him. I said I don't know what kind of changes will occur in your real world due to the origin of the void law merging with it while you are still a rank 4 core evolver. But I never said you wouldn't receive any benefits from it. Evan's eyes lit up when he heard this and he looked at her eagerly, his gaze practically shining, urging her to continue. Have you tried testing the power of your lost seal? She asked. Evan shook his head. I wanted to ask you if something was wrong with my lost seal before doing anything, so I haven't tested its power yet. Anastasia nodded in understanding. She then pointed toward one of the walls of the training room. Try it. No need to use your full power, just a casual attack will do. Evan didn't hesitate. He used the most crude and direct method possible to test his law power. Without applying any skills or techniques, he simply pointed his finger at the wall and channeled the raw law power from his law seal into his fingertip. Immediately, deep, dark purple particles gathered at the tip of his finger. And the next moment, swish, a dark, blazing laser beam of raw void law power shot forward. The space in front of him, as fragile as paper before the might of his attack, tore apart instantly. And when the beam collided against the wall, whoosh! The laser beam morphed into a miniature void rift, swallowing a very small section of the wall and banishing it into the void space. Evan was stunned when he saw this and looked at the missing part of the wall with a blank expression. Even though the affected area was small, smaller than a baseball, he was still utterly shocked. The walls of the training room were made from rank 5 materials and reinforced with multiple formations designed to strengthen them. And yet, a crude, unrefined attack from him had damaged it so easily. This is the effect of having the origin of the void law merged into your law seal in real world, Anastasia explained. The power of your law energy is now far superior to that of others, so much so that even a rank 5 core evolver would have to worry of it. Evan took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down despite his excitement. Then, without hesitation, he attacked again. Although the energy consumption is quite high, the power output is absolutely worth it. And this is just raw void law power. If I combine it with my skills and other attack methods, wouldn't it be insanely overpowered? Anastasia watched Evan's excited expression and remained silent. Because there was one thing she hadn't told him. Since he was already merging the origin of the void law into his real world while still a rank 4 core evolver, there was a high possibility that he might be able to skip rank 5 entirely and directly ascend to rank 6. But she didn't mention it, because she wasn't sure if that was even possible. In the end, it all depends on how his real world evolves under the influence of the origin of the void law, she thought to herself, and once again, her thoughts drifted toward the dark, empty room upstairs. Chapter 13:12 No entry. Evan tested the raw power of the void law a few more times, and the more he experimented, the more satisfied he felt. This origin of the void law is incredibly strong. My void law seal is only at 0.1%, yet its power is already enough to threaten a peak rank 4 core evolver. If I use the void law's power along with my skills or techniques, I might even be able to injure a rank 5 core evolver, without relying on my authorities like Death Guardian and Master of Shadows. Evan thought inwardly and sighed at his own broken powers. His gaze shifted to Anastasia, who was standing in front of him, deep in thought, and a sinister glint flickered in his eyes. Then, with a swift sidestep, he coated his palm in void law energy and, at an incredible speed, swung toward her bottom. Anastasia, still lost in thought about the empty dark room above, suddenly felt a chill run down her spine, and without hesitation, she instinctively activated soul resonance, recovering most of her power. Boom! The entire room shook violently, the ground cracked and collapsed, and debris flew in all directions. Evan had an awkward expression on his face as he stared at the fair, delicate hand that had caught his palm before it could reach its destination. Slowly, he raised his gaze, only to meet Anastasia's disbelieving eyes. She looked stunned, as if she still couldn't comprehend that he had actually dared to sneak attack her. And to top it off, he had used such a powerful attack. If she hadn't reacted in time, even though she wouldn't have been injured, the pain of getting slapped with such force would have definitely made her jump around the training room while rubbing her bottom. A dark aura surrounded Anastasia as she spoke in a low, dangerous voice. "Good, my dear. You were really brave." A strange glint flickered in her eyes. Evan's instinct screamed at him, and he immediately felt a bad premonition. He quickly pulled back his trapped palm and spoke in a hurried voice. "Honey, don't misunderstand. There was a mosquito. It was about to bite you right there. Only I have the right to bite you. Seeing that fool mosquito trying to take advantage of you, I lost my composure and accidentally attacked you." He tried to maintain a serious expression while speaking, but his uncertain eyes betrayed him, clearly proving that even he didn't believe his own bullshit. Anastasia's eyebrows twitched at his ridiculous excuse. However, after a moment, something flashed in her mind, and the corners of her lips curved upward. "Oh really?" she asked, feigning surprise before sighing in relief. "Thank you, dear. If you hadn't saved me, that mosquito would have taken advantage of me." Evan, who had been thinking about escaping, was completely stunned. What is she thinking? This thought crossed his mind. However, before he could even process it, her next words sent a chill running down a certain important part of his body. "Oh no!" Anastasia suddenly exclaimed in anger. "The wife of that bastard mosquito is now targeting you, and she dared to touch the place that only I have the right to touch." Then, she slapped toward right below Evan's navel. Fu*K. Evan's eyes widened in horror. Without a second thought, he tried to activate his Death Guardian authority. But nothing happened. His authority was still on cooldown from when he had used it a few hours ago to create his law seal. "Damn woman, are you trying to kill your own future children?" Evan shouted, immediately activating Dragon Force to boost his strength. A surge of power coursed through his body, and he instinctively reached out, desperately trying to catch her hand. Though, he had no confidence in stopping her. However, to his utter shock, he actually succeeded. Her hand stopped mid-air, right before it could unleash a catastrophe upon him. Evan was confused. He looked at Anastasia, only to see her gazing at him playfully. What? Did you really think I would, Dester? Before she could finish her sentence, Evan yanked her toward him, wrapped an arm around her waist, and whispered in a cold voice. You are done for. The space around them twisted and in an instant, both of them vanished from the training room. However, before they disappeared, thousands of individuals suddenly appeared in the training room. All the shadow undeads, who had been peacefully resting inside Evan's shadow storage, were suddenly expelled from their cozy home and looked at the training room in confusion. Alora, who had been watching her anime series in Evan's soul space, blinked blankly at the training room, now overflowing with shadow undeads. She tilted her head, scratching the back of it in confusion. Then, she stood up and began looking around. Daddy, Mommy, she called out, running around the room. She tried to return to her daddy's side using their soul connection. But, she was blocked. A glowing, no entry, sign hovered in the space between their connection. You guessed it. The bastard parents had abandoned their child. Woo woo. Alora burst into tears. Why is there a no entry sign? Did they abandon me, just like in animes, because I am an adopted child? As she cried, a pair of hands gently lifted her up. Don't cry, cutie, Elysia said as she patted Alora's head gently and spoke in a soothing voice. They didn't abandon you. They are just preparing a surprise for you. Since Elysia had been summoned by Evan to protect him during his breakthrough, she had been in the training room the entire time, witnessing the whole scummy act of those bastard parents escaping and throwing away their child. Alora sniffled and blinked at her. Really? Auntie, you are not lying to me, right? She asked doubtfully. Of course. Elysia nodded quickly. I never lie. Alora's eyes sparkled with excitement when she heard Elysia. What kind of surprise are they preparing for me? She asked eagerly, her eyes shining like stars. Is it a new dish? Elysia felt a fatal blow to her soul seeing Alora's shining eyes and had no idea how to respond. Because, Alora was right about the dish. It's just that, the eaters were her scummy parents. 1313, a delusional child. Alora sat on a sofa, munching cookies like a cookie monster, her teary eyes fixed on Elysia, who stood in front of her. Auntie, it's already been 10 days. You said Mommy and Daddy are preparing a surprise for me. Tell me, how long will it take for them to come back? She finished the cookie in her hand, immediately picking up another and munching on it just as eagerly. Hearing Alora, Elysia didn't know how to respond. She racked her brain for a solution but ultimately sighed in defeat and shook her head. Lowering her voice, she finally spoke. Little girl, I am not sure when they will come back, but... She paused, her eyes narrowing slightly. I did hear them talking about preparing your surprise in a dark, closed room. If you can find where that dark closed room is, you will be able to meet them. Hearing Elysia's words, Alora froze mid-bite, her eyes widening in surprise. Dark room. Auntie, are you sure? She suddenly asked, her voice filled with excitement. Yes. How about it? Do you want to go out with me and look for this dark clo? Elysia had planned to take Alora out to distract her from her scummy parents for the time being. However, before she could even finish speaking, Alora suddenly grabbed her hand, dragging her out of the living room. I know where the dark closed room you are talking about is. Excitedly, she led Elysia toward the second floor. When Mommy took me shopping, she bought a bunch of strange dresses for herself, saying they were a good addition to her collection. She said she hid them in the dark closed room. As she spoke, she came to a stop in front of a room on the second floor. I remember Mommy placing those clothes in this room. That means this must be the dark closed room where they are preparing my surprise. Elysia stared at the closed door, her face blank. Shifting her gaze to Alora, she saw that the little girl was already reaching for the doorknob. Oh my god! Elysia screamed internally and cursed Anastasia. What the hell was she thinking, showing and telling a child about a place like this? She wanted to stop Alora, but before she could react, with a light push, Alora flung the door open and rushed inside, even before it had fully opened. I am finished. Elysia was horrified, realizing she had just ruined the fun of those scummy parents and they might vent out their frustration on her later on. A cold shiver ran down her spine as she imagined what kind of punishment she would suffer for telling Alora they were here. She considered running away, but then, she noticed something strange. Why is the room so silent? Slowly, she leaned forward, peeking inside from behind the door, only to see an empty room. Huh. Elysia immediately stepped inside, looking around, but everything in the room was spotless. All the furniture was neatly arranged, and it didn't look like anyone had been here for many days, much less played strange games those two people were talking about. Could it be that we are in the wrong room? She frowned, deep in thought. Then, she noticed Elora, standing motionless, staring blankly at the empty space. Unlike Elysia, Elora was someone who had recently watched far too many animes, and a child's mind, fueled by countless anime plots, ran in a very different direction. I am sure this is the room Mommy called the dark closed room. Auntie said Daddy and Mommy were preparing a surprise for me here, but they are not here, and they have been missing for 10 days. Many thoughts flashed through Elora's little brain, and her eyes gradually narrowed. Mommy and Daddy are the strongest people in the world, but they suddenly disappeared, leaving behind their only child. The plot of the anime she had just watched last night flashed in her mind. Strong parents, suddenly disappeared, leaving behind their child. And she realized, her current situation was exactly like it. Could it be, the entire world is in great danger? And as the strongest people in the world, Mommy and Daddy went to eliminate that danger. But they were worried I would be in danger if they took me with them, so they left me behind. Elora's eyes moistened slightly. Daddy even left behind all of his shadow undeads in the training room for me. It's like he left behind his legacy, so that I could grow stronger as quickly as possible, and protect myself. Elora wiped away her unshed tears, her face turning serious. No, I have to become stronger. I will become the strongest, slay anyone who stands in my way, and rescue Mommy and Daddy, who must have been captured by the enemy they went to eliminate. Without saying a word, Elora turned around and left the room. Elysia watched the small figure disappear into the hallway, feeling that something was off. Mommy, Daddy, wait for me. Elora muttered under her breath, her voice filled with unshakable determination. And thus, another delusional child, who believed she was the protagonist of the world, was born. Elysia, however, completely misunderstood Elora's silent retreat. She must be very upset because she didn't find them, she sighed, shaking her head. Just where did those scummy parents run off to? She muttered and left the room. However, what neither Elysia nor Elora noticed was a tiny, almost invisible portal, no bigger than a grain of sand, floating above the bed. Inside Anastasia's core world, a mysterious region, surrounded by towering mountains and thick mist. The flow of time was completely unstable, as if an extraordinary power had slowed it down. Suddenly, a gentle breeze swept through the mist, and a pink dress fluttered out from the fog. Upon closer inspection it turned out to be a short nurse dress. The wind continued to blow, slowly dispersing the mist. And as the haze faded away, the true scene hidden within was finally revealed. Chapter 13-14 Damn Cheater. At the top of a flat mountain, so high it touched the clouds, the ground was covered in vibrant green grass, scattered with colorful flowers and small plants. In the center of the mountain, a massive bed made of clouds was placed. Within a 100-meter radius around the bed, trash was strewn everywhere. But upon closer inspection, one would realize it wasn't actually trash. But hundreds of different kinds of clothes, along with some strange items such as whip, candles, handcuffs, blindfolds, and many more things that would make anyone's imagination run wild. The entire mountain top was bathed in a strange silver hazy glow, and within the scope of this glow, the flow of time was completely different from the outside world. On the massive cloud bed, two people lay sleeping. One was a woman and the other was a skeleton. Oh no, not a skeleton, but a man so skinny he looked like he was on the verge of death. Suddenly, huff, the frail man took a deep breath, and in the next instant, his entire body was enveloped in purple light. In an instant, his body regenerated. The frail skeleton-like man was no more. In his place, a handsome man emerged, his body fully restored. His shoulder-length black hair swayed slightly in the wind. His sharp, pointy ears twitched, and his black eyes, filled with complicated emotions, slowly opened. How many years has it been? The once skeletal man, who had just used his death transfer skill to recover his body, muttered in a low voice. Evan glanced at the naked woman beside him. She lay face down, her body buried into the soft puffy clouds, breathing evenly in deep sleep. He sighed and sat up. A dragon is really a dragon, damn. His expression darkened. It's a good thing the cooldown time of my death transfer skill is just 2 hours, and I can use it whenever I want. Otherwise, in these past years, I definitely would have died over 1,000 times. His anger flared as he thought about it, and without hesitation, he raised his palm, slapping the sleeping woman's bare buttocks. Damn cheater. Just because I can fully recover using my death transfer skill, she started using soul resonance to increase her power and drain me dry before the skill's cooldown ended. Anastasia hummed sleepily at his complaint. But she didn't even bother to open her eyes. Evan's lips twitched. Oi, before you pass out completely from overusing soul resonance, at least tell me. How long has it been since I have been here? He shook Anastasia's shoulders lightly, his expression turning serious. He knew she had altered the time flow in this area. She had even asked him for 3 drops of time liquid to use, but he wasn't sure exactly how much time had passed. It's not much. Anastasia's sleepy voice murmured. Only 10 days have passed in the outside world, and 10 years here. Hiss. Evan sucked in a sharp breath, his body tensing in shock, and he nearly fainted. Damn, I have read about people enjoying themselves for years only in cultivation novels, but now, his gaze shifted to the strange objects scattered around the bed, his mouth twitching. They say time flies when you are doing something interesting. I never really cared about this saying before, but now, his eyebrows twitched. Where the hell did she even get all of these things? And how long has she been collecting them? Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. It's a good thing, a really good thing that I didn't try anything with her before becoming a rank 4 core evolver. If it weren't for the dragon blood flowers I consumed, if it weren't for my body being nourished by the power of law when I broke through to rank 4, forget about doing anything, I wouldn't even be able to break through her defense and get started. Evan collapsed onto the bed, his body half sinking into the soft clouds. Even though his physical condition was at its peak, thanks to the death transfer skill, it couldn't recover his spiritual fatigue. A wave of exhaustion swept over him, his heavy eyelids threatened to close. At the same time, his mind wandered to his shadow undeads. The death transfer skill transferred all damage and abnormal effects from his body to his shadow undeads. And during the years he spent with Anastasia, he had used the skill thousands of times. Now, most of his shadow undeads were suffering from severe energy depletion. Even though they had unlimited stamina, they still passed out from exhaustion. Meanwhile, after a certain delusional child noticed their strange condition, her red-rimmed eyes burned with anger. She was convinced her precious daddy was being tortured by the enemy he had gone to fight. And because his shadow undeads were connected to him, they were also affected by this cruel treatment. Back on the mountain top, Anastasia suddenly leaned against Evan's shoulder and murmured softly. There is still some time before the time flow here returns to normal. Why don't you sleep until its effect ends before leaving? Evan thought about his exhausted soul and nodded. He pulled Anastasia closer and spoke in a low voice. Recently, Alora tried to enter my soul space many times. Do you think something is wrong? Anastasia chuckled, nuzzling against him. She must have eaten all her reserved food and wants me to cook more for her. Evan thought about Alora's gluttonous personality and felt Anastasia was right. Well, it's just been 10 days outside, even if she ate everything, it wouldn't be a big deal. Don't worry, even if she is out of food, she can go find Sylvan and the others to get more, Anastasia said lightly. Evan tightened his grip around Anastasia and closed his eyes. You just wait, when I become a rank 6 core evolver, I will take you on a 1,000-year ride and make you beg for mercy without needing to use my death transfer skill. Anastasia sneered and closed her eyes as well. We will see who begs for mercy once I merge back with my essence clone and recovers all of my powers. Chapter 13-15 A New Authority. Inside Anastasia's core world, Evan opened his eyes after 1 month of sleep and felt completely refreshed, with no sign of previous soul exhaustion. He stretched his slightly stiff body and looked at Anastasia, who was still sleeping due to the overuse of her soul resonance skill. The time flow here has returned to normal, huh, he muttered, looking around the mountain top and noticing that the hazy silver glow, which had previously covered the surroundings, had disappeared. He extended his spiritual senses toward Anastasia and found that her soul was in the process of recovering due to the effects of soul resonance. According to his observations, it would take her a few more days before she wakes up. Not wanting to disturb her, he silently left the bed. As he looked at the mess they had caused on the mountain, his mouth twitched slightly. In an instant, his image blurred as he moved all over the mountain at rapid speed, cleaning up everything with swift and precise movements. After finishing the cleanup, he headed to the nearby waterfall and, without hesitation, leapt from its edge. As he submerged himself in the cold water, he sighed in satisfaction before turning his attention to a few notifications that he had received years ago but had yet to thoroughly review. The syncretization rate between your race, Eltern, and the origin universe has increased by 3%. Current syncretization rate between your race, Eltern, and the origin universe, 81%. Your unique skill, Dragon Force, has evolved into Authority, Dragon's Call. Dragon's Call Authority. Upon activation, you can transform into a semi-dragon state for 2 minutes. During this period, your strength and endurance will be increased by 100%. This effect of authority can be used once a day. You can also use the previous effect of the skill, and the cost of using the skill would be reduced from 20% per second to 10% per second. Well, I can understand why Dragon Force evolved. It must have been because of Anastasia. But why did the syncretization rate also increase? Evan raised an eyebrow in confusion as he carefully examined his status window. However, he was not very clear about how the syncretization rate progressed and evolved. Even though he thought about it for quite some time, he couldn't reach a definite conclusion. On the other hand, the evolution of Dragon's Call was something he could easily understand. Previously, in order to activate Dragon Force, he needed to burn 20% of his world essence every second, which made it an extremely costly skill to use. But now, not only had the cost of the skill been reduced to half, but it had also gained an additional effect, allowing him to transform into a semi-dragon state for 2 minutes, increasing both his strength and endurance by 100%. On the surface, this improvement didn't look too significant, but Evan knew well that authorities could be stacked for even greater effects. If he first used Dragon's Call to increase his strength and endurance by 100%, and then activated his Death Guardian skill, which further increased those stats by 5 times, just thinking about it made Evan feel goosebumps. His endurance was already doubled due to the effects of Ruler's authority, and with the right combination of authorities, he could push it to an even higher level. I am on my way to becoming an absolute tank, he couldn't help but comment before finally closing his status window. Stretching out his hand, he took out a golden-colored fruit from his shadow storage. The fruit shot out from his shadow and landed easily in his grasp. He examined it curiously. The fruit had been given to him by Anastasia, who had told him that one of her close friends had gifted it to her. According to Anastasia, she had originally tried to refuse the gift, as it was far too precious. However, her friend had threatened to end their friendship if she did not accept it. What a good friend, I wish I also had a friend like her, Evan muttered with a sigh before looking at the fruit's details. Meanwhile, in Elvensheen, under the Tree of Life, a certain elf woman suddenly sneezed and absent-mindedly scratched the back of her head, momentarily thinking, perhaps delusionally, that someone out there was praising her. Fruit of Life, upon consumption, heals all injuries, including both spiritual and physical, and permanently increases your stamina by 20,000 points, increase in stat points only applicable upon first consumption. Once fully absorbed, it also increases your understanding of the conceptual energy of life by 2%. Evan wasn't surprised when he saw the details of the fruit, as Anastasia had already explained its effects to him beforehand. The increase of 20,000 stamina points was certainly tempting, but what truly attracted him was its ability to increase his understanding of the conceptual energy of life. Previously, he had tried to increase his comprehension of the conceptual energies of death, life, and soul by using the rune of absorption, just as he had done with void energy. However, the rune of absorption had failed to transform the energy into something that could increase his understanding of them. At the time, Anastasia had explained to him that he might first need to use an item that naturally increased his comprehension of these 3 energies. That way, He could experience their nature firsthand before attempting to use the rune of absorption to transform external energy sources into the same type. Anastasia had already instructed Leopold to search for such items, but so far, there had been no news from him. Now, by consuming the fruit of life, Evan could finally experience the energy that increased his understanding of the conceptual energy of life. Afterward, he could use the rune of absorption to replicate the process, further accelerating his growth in comprehending conceptual energy of life. Although only a few days have passed in the outside world, I should still head out and begin the next phase of my plan. Defeating Winterclaw won't be an easy task after all, Evan murmured as he stored away the fruit of life and stood up. He made his way back to the top of the mountain once more. Seeing that Anastasia was still peacefully sleeping, he turned toward a small portal that floated at the mountain's edge. Stepping forward, he reached out and placed his hand on the portal. The moment his fingers made contact, his vision blurred, and in the blink of an eye, he found himself lying on a bed in a dark, enclosed room. He had just exited Anastasia's core world when, all of a sudden, he heard the sounds of fighting coming from outside and his expression changed. Chapter 13:16 I will take care of you. Is someone attacking the closed world of the Dryads? Hearing the sound of fighting, Evan's eyes narrowed. Without even standing up from the bed, he activated his void ability, opening a dark void rift beneath him that swallowed him whole. Outside the house, high in the sky, another dark void rift appeared, and Evan stepped out of it with an expression that looked as if he was ready to go on a killing spree at the first sight of an enemy. However, the moment he saw the people responsible for the commotion, his killing intent instantly disappeared, replaced by a look of sheer confusion. "What's going on here?" he muttered in a low voice, his gaze landing on Alora, who was fighting against Elysia. At the same time, several shadow undeads occasionally attacked her as well. The little girl leapt around the mountain like a small monkey, barely dodging their attacks. She wasn't using her power of destruction and seemed to be undergoing some kind of intense training to refine her combat skills. Watching her struggle, Evan could swear he even started hearing a motivational BGM in the background, as if he were watching the main character of a movie going through a rigorous training arc before setting out to challenge the world. What did I miss in the few days I spent playing around with Anastasia? He muttered, dazed, as he saw Alora get hit by an attack and drop to the ground. Her face was covered in dirt, her eyes filled with exhaustion. But despite this, she gritted her teeth and forced herself to stand again. For some reason, Evan felt like the BGM in the background was intensifying. Who is the mother fu cur playing this background music, making my daughter work like a pig? He cursed before taking a step forward and vanishing from the sky. Alora, who had just wiped some dirt from her face, sighed as she lay on the ground, staring at the sky. What a strange life. Just a day ago, she was a carefree child, spending her time playing and eating without a single worry. And now, here she was, eating dirt. Tasty dish eater yesterday. Dirt eater today. I can't stop here. I need to become stronger to save mommy and dad. Before she could even finish her delusional thoughts, someone grabbed the collar of her dress and effortlessly lifted her up. What are you doing playing in the dirt like this? A familiar voice spoke from behind, making her mind go completely blank for a moment. Like a robot, she stiffly turned her head to see who had picked her up. When she saw Evan staring at her with displeasure, his expression clearly disapproving of her dirt-covered clothes, her eyes widened in shock. Daddy, why are you here? Weren't you fighting against a terrible monster and getting tortured by it? Waiting for me to become stronger so I could come and save you. Evan's body stiffened when he heard Alora's words and he looked at her in utter disbelief. How did she find out I was fighting against a terrible monster and was tortured by her for a whopping 10 years? His gaze immediately shifted toward Elysia, his eyes turning cold. He clearly remembered that when he made plans with Anastasia, Elysia had also been there and had overheard everything. Feeling the weight of Evan's piercing gaze, Elysia broke into a cold sweat. She quickly made an X gesture with her hands, shaking her head ferociously as if trying to clear her name. Do you think I would believe you? Evan used shadow sense to communicate with her telepathically. Not only did you tell Alora things that shouldn't be shared with children, but you also made up a lie that I was being tortured. Let me tell you, it wasn't me who was tortured by that woman. In fact, that woman was the one who was tortured by me. That's why she is not here and is still sleeping, recovering from her wounds. Oh. Elysia immediately nodded in understanding, her expression showing that she fully believed him. What could she do? After all, the boss is always right. As a good, loyal subordinate, she dared not question him and accepted his words without hesitation. Seeing that his non-existent dignity had been saved, Evan felt satisfied. He then looked at Elora, who was inexplicably shedding tears. Daddy, you came back alone. Mommy wasn't able to make it out, was she? Elora sniffled. She sacrificed herself to give you a chance to escape from that terrible monster, right? Literal question marks appeared above Evan's head as he stared blankly at his daughter, wondering what had gone wrong with her brain while he was away. Seeing his silence, Elora burst into full-blown tears. Woo, don't worry, Daddy. I will take care of you from now on. I promise I will become really strong and bring Mommy back to life. Evan gazed at his idiotic daughter, who was sobbing in his arms, without any expression. It wasn't that he didn't want to say anything. He simply had no experience in raising a child. Having spent most of his life alone, he had no idea what the best way to correct her thinking was. Being a parent is not easy, he sighed inwardly before gently patting Elora's head. Elysia, go and inform Sylvan that we will be leaving the closed world of the Dryads tomorrow to meet with the people of the Phoenix clan. Yes, sir. Hearing Evan's words, Elysia immediately saluted like a soldier and dashed away, looking as if she had just been bailed out of jail. Evan watched her disappear into the distance and shook his head. Then, he turned his attention back to Elora, who was still crying over her imaginary loss of her mother, before silently walking away from the mountain, which was now in complete disarray due to her training. Let's have a good chat, my dear daughter, he spoke softly. The next moment, both he and Elora vanished from the spot. Chapter 13-17 Phoenix Clan Part 1. Evan came to the training ground where he had left all of his shadow undead and called them back into his shadow storage. At the same time, he used his world essence to heal the injured shadow undeads who were lying with hollow eyes due to the side effect of death transfer skill. Elora was sitting on Evan's shoulders, staring at her empty hands with a distressed expression. Daddy, please return M. No. Before Elora could finish speaking, Evan refused in a serious voice. You are not getting back your smart bracelet for at least a week. But, no buts, Evan left the training room after collecting all of his shadow undeads. I will return it after a week, and from now on, I will strictly monitor your anime watching time. Elora lowered her head in disappointment but didn't dare to argue. After having a long talk with her, Evan finally understood the reason behind her idiotic actions, and he was left speechless. He had also watched plenty of anime when he was on Earth, but he had never immersed himself in them to such an extreme. Just recalling her bizarre actions gave him the urge to go back in time and beat himself for ever allowing her to come into contact with anime. Well, there is nothing I can do about what's already happened, but I can still control the future. He sighed and contacted Elysia using Shadow Sense, wanting to confirm whether she had informed Sylvan that they would be leaving the closed world of the Dryads tomorrow to meet with the Phoenix clan. After confirming with Elysia that Sylvan had no objections to their departure, Evan spent the rest of the day practicing and experimenting with various things. He first used the Fruit of Life given to him by Anastasia, which increased his stamina by a full 20,000 points. At the same time, his understanding of the conceptual energy of life increased by 2%. During the process, he carefully observed the energy that had enhanced his comprehension of the conceptual energy of life. After analyzing it closely, he used energy devouring on the body of a peak rank 3 eldritch creature. This time, the rune of absorption successfully converted the eldritch energy into energy that could further improve his understanding of the conceptual energy of life. However, unlike the conceptual energy of the void, which could increase by approximately 1.5% when absorbing a peak rank 3 eldritch creature, the same body only increased his understanding of the conceptual energy of life by 0.5%. Seeing the result, Evan couldn't help but sigh, feeling mentally drained just thinking about the sheer number of high-level bodies he would need to push his understanding of the conceptual energies of death, life, and soul to 100%. Although Utopia had billions of people, the number of individuals capable of reaching the peak of rank 3 was not particularly large. Moreover, the higher his comprehension of these conceptual energies, the more bodies he would require in the future. For instance, if one peak rank 3 body could currently increase his understanding by 0.5%, then once his comprehension of the conceptual energy of life reached 20% or 30%, the same body might only contribute 0.1%. Evans speculated that he might be able to increase the amount of transformed energy by enhancing the patterns of the rune of absorption. Currently, the number of patterns engraved on the energy veins of the energy-devouring skill was 43. Now that he was a rank 4 core evolver, he had the capacity to increase the number of patterns. However, engraving patterns was a time-consuming process, so Evan decided to postpone it until after dealing with the Phoenix clan. Other than these experiments, Evan also attempted to use the body of a peak rank 3 Eldritch Horror to enhance the rate of his lost seal, but the attempt failed. He wasn't particularly disappointed, as he had already expected this outcome. The primary reason for his failure was the difference between a rank 3 and a rank 4 core evolver. The body of a rank 3 Eldritch Horror didn't contain any law power, whereas the energy required to enhance his law seal was void law energy. The current patterns of the rune of absorption were simply incapable of converting eldritch energy into law energy. But this didn't bother him much. After all, if a rank 3 body wasn't sufficient, it simply meant he needed to use the body of a rank 4 core evolver. Unlike rank 3, the bodies of rank 4 core evolvers contained law power. All Evan needed to do was use energy devouring in conjunction with the rune of absorption to absorb and stabilize this energy for his own use. Once the fight with Winterclaw breaks out, the last thing I will need to worry about is a lack of high-level corpses. Evan muttered, his eyes flashing coldly. During his time in Anastasia's core world, she had informed him of some crucial intelligence she had obtained from Illustraea. Mithranor and Winterclaw, huh? His lips curled into a slight smirk. I was wondering where I should look for that guy, but to think he is with Winterclaw. He shook his head and looked at the rising sun outside the window. Deciding to check on Anastasia, he entered her core world and saw that she was still asleep. Without disturbing her, Evan left her core world and headed towards the teleportation building of the closed world of the Dryads. Upon arrival, he saw that Sylvan was already waiting for him. However, Sylvan had altered his appearance. He now looked like a sinister old man with crooked eyes, someone who would scam you out of all your money. Evan paused at the sight and instinctively touched the earring he was wearing. Although this earring was crafted by Anastasia and could shield him from detection abilities, he still felt it was a good idea to disguise himself as well. After a brief moment of thought, his appearance shifted, returning to the face he had used when meeting his cheap sister. Without exchanging a word, he walked towards Sylvan, and together, they stepped into the teleportation building. Chapter 13-18 Phoenix Clan Part 2. A sinister-looking, hunched old man walked amid the hustle and bustle of a busy market street, his crooked, narrowed eyes scanning everything around him. Whenever pedestrians or shopkeepers felt his gaze, their bodies stiffened, and they had the overwhelming urge to run away and hide their most precious belongings 1,000 feet underground, as if failing to do so would result in the crooked old man sneaking into their homes at night to rob them blind. Beside the old man walked a gray-haired man with a lazy expression, as though he would fall asleep at any moment. As the gray-haired man walked, the corner of his mouth twitched from time to time. "Oi, old man, can you stop looking at everything with your thief-like gaze?" Evan's voice echoed inside Sylvan's mind. Sylvan glanced at Evan in confusion and responded in a puzzled tone. "What are you talking about? I am just checking if there is anything useful to buy." Evan opened his mouth to argue but found himself at a loss for words, because Sylvan was telling the truth. He had no intention of stealing anything. It was just that the disguise he had chosen made him look incredibly suspicious. Glancing around, Evan noted how people instinctively stepped aside to avoid them, some even clutching their storage rings tightly as if fearing for their lives, and he decided it was best to ignore them. When we meet them later on, don't reveal your full power. Let them sense that you are only at the peak of rank 3. Sylvan raised an eyebrow at Evan's instruction. "It will be difficult to convince them if we don't show them the difference in our power," he said seriously. "I know." Evan nodded calmly. "We will show them the difference eventually, but we have to wait for the perfect opportunity. Before revealing what we can offer, we first need to see if they are even qualified to work with us." Sylvan gave Evan a skeptical look. "What are you planning?" he asked, feeling as though this guy was definitely scheming something against the poor Phoenix clan. "Don't give me that look," Evan replied, his voice full of righteous indignation. "I am not scheming anything. I just want to make my sister's tribe more prosperous." Sylvan let out a sneering laugh but didn't say anything further. Unbeknownst to him, the moment he laughed, a group of small children playing with marbles nearby wet their pants in terror and bolted from the scene, cursing the ghost-faced old man under their breath. Currently, Evan and Sylvan were in Maldrith Kingdom, one of the many kingdoms under the rule of the Frozen Monarchy, the empire controlled by Winterclaw. After using the teleportation formation in the closed world of the Dryads, they had arrived a few thousand kilometers away from Maldrith Kingdom, appearing in a hidden location built by Ashley to connect the kingdom with the teleportation building of the Dryads, closed world. The last time Evan had parted ways with Blaze, she had told him to come to Maldrith Kingdom if he ever needed to contact them. However, the Phoenix clan itself was not actually located in Maldrith Kingdom. The Maldrith Kingdom was situated in the northern region of the Frozen Monarchy, whereas the Phoenix clan resided in an area known as the Vortex Peaks, a treacherous mountainous region riddled with deadly traps, located in the southern part of the Frozen Monarchy. Evan knew that Blaze had deliberately chosen not to invite him to the Vortex Peaks because she feared he would cause chaos there, just as he had done in the Tomb of the Ancient. Although many high-level individuals in the Phoenix clan were strong enough to kill him if he acted recklessly, his chief sister still dreaded his unpredictability and didn't want to risk letting him set foot in their sacred territory. Evan found this treatment rather dissatisfying. Where was the basic trust between siblings? He had already made up his mind. When he met his chief sister again, he would spank her properly and teach her the consequences of not trusting her good brother. As Evan stewed in his thoughts, Sylvan suddenly muttered under his breath, glancing at Evan from the corner of his eye. "This world is truly dark. Here, good people never have good endings." He didn't know what Evan was thinking, but he could tell that the guy beside him was definitely plotting something sinister against a good-hearted individual. Evan's mouth twitched slightly at Sylvan's muttering, and just as he was about to retort, something caught his attention in the distance, causing him to pause. Sylvan also noticed it and narrowed his eyes. "Is that the place they told you about?" he asked, eyeing the cheap-looking roadside restaurant with a strange expression. Evan pursed his lips, feeling his cheap sister was really a cheapskate for choosing such a shabby location for their meeting. Maybe the Phoenix clan advocates frugality. Evan murmured to Sylvan, attempting to salvage some dignity for his sister. Sylvan, however, suddenly spoke in a more serious tone. "There is a peak rank 5 core evolver deep inside that restaurant." Evan's eyes lit up at Sylvan's words, and he glanced at the crooked old man beside him. The old man returned his gaze, instantly understanding what he was thinking. A thuggish grin spread across both of their faces, sending a fresh wave of terror through the pedestrians nearby. Some even quickened their pace, scurrying away as if they had seen two criminals preparing for a heist. "It seems we will be able to achieve what we wanted," Evan remarked, stepping forward toward the restaurant. Sylvan followed behind him, maintaining a few steps of distance, perfectly playing the role of a subordinate. As Evan drew closer to the restaurant, a girl with bob-cut red hair stepped out of the entrance. Upon seeing the girl, Evan's lips curled into a smirk and his eyes shone with hidden luster. "Sister, I missed you so much." Chapter 13-19 Phoenix Clan Part 3. Blaze stepped out of the shabby roadside restaurant, holding a bright red token in her hand. The bob-cut-haired girl wore a simple dress, making her look like an ordinary young lady from a humble household. Even the people passing by the restaurant didn't recognize that the woman standing in front of the restaurant was a rank 3 Phoenix. The last time she met Evan, she had given him a token to contact her when he decided to visit the Phoenix clan. She had received his message yesterday and informed him of their meeting place. Just now, she had been discussing his matter with the rank 5 elder of her clan, who had accompanied her, when she noticed the token in her hand reacting to something. Seeing its response, she immediately understood that the token she had given to Evan was nearby and stepped outside to meet him. And as she expected, the moment she came out, she saw a lazy-looking man with gray hair walking toward her with a smile. "I missed you so much, sister." Hearing his enthusiastic voice, Blaze suddenly felt a sense of foreboding, and her danger sense buzzed in warning. She already knew this guy had a crooked personality and couldn't be trusted, but at this moment, she finally confirmed, he was definitely here with bad intentions. What's more, the thief-like appearance of the hunched old man walking behind Evan only reinforced her suspicions. Though wary, Blaze wasn't anxious. This time, she had brought a rank 5 elder from her clan with her. She could sense that Evan was still a mid-level rank 3 core evolver, the same as when she last saw him, and the old man was at the peak of rank 3. Even if they were strong, against a rank 5 core evolver, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Thinking about all these factors, Blaze felt more confident. Despite knowing her cheap brother was here with ulterior motives, she smiled politely and nodded. I didn't see you for just a few days, and you seem to have become even stronger, she said, feigning admiration. Indeed. Evan nodded shamelessly. I am very strong now. If I want, I can pinch you to death with just my pinky finger. Hearing Evan, Blaze's polite smile stiffened and she suddenly had the urge to kick him in the face. Why doesn't this bastard play by the rules? Shouldn't he act modestly and return the compliment by praising me as well? Taking a deep breath to calm her rising blood pressure, she glanced around. Did only the two of you come? She asked, slightly puzzled. Don't worry, I have full authority over this matter. If we reach a cooperation, I will introduce you to the others, Evan responded calmly. Despite knowing there was a rank 5 core evolver inside the restaurant, he asked with a confused look. You didn't come alone, right? I know your status in the clan is quite high, but it shouldn't be high enough for you to take the lead in discussing the matters I brought up last time. Blaze's mouth twitched slightly. She felt like he was looking down on her. Puffing out her chest slightly, she spoke in a proud voice. I am not alone, but I do have the authority to take part in the discussion, and if I am not satisfied, I can end the deal right away. Oh. Evan raised an eyebrow in mild surprise as he hadn't expected his stupid sister to have such power. Now that I think about it, I have never tried to find out what my cheap sister's status is in the Phoenix clan, maybe her position is higher than I thought. As the thought crossed his mind, Evan smiled at Blaze and nodded approvingly. As expected from my sister, you didn't let me down. The corners of Blaze's lips lifted slightly upon hearing his words, but the next second, her face froze. Why am I feeling proud after hearing his praise? Shaking her head, she quickly snapped back to reality, her expression turning serious. Demonic magic. This bastard was using some kind of demonic charm to make her lower her guard. Come in. I will take you to meet the elder. Evan nodded and followed Blaze inside. Sylvan walked a few steps behind him, his voice ringing in Evan's mind. That rank 5 core evolver has been using his spiritual sense to listen to everything you just said. Evan wasn't surprised when he heard Sylvan's words. In fact, ever since reaching rank 4, his spiritual power had become significantly stronger and had been refined by the power of law. Currently, his spiritual power was close to the peak of rank 4, and its purity was far higher than that of any core evolver at the same level. Even though he couldn't pinpoint the exact source, he had already sensed that someone had been spying on them using spiritual senses earlier. That was precisely why he had deliberately mentioned having full authority over this matter while also confirming that only the two of them had come, ensuring that the hidden listener heard it. I wonder what kind of trick he will try to pull after knowing all this, Evan mused, a faint glimmer of expectation in his eyes. As Blaze led them deeper into the roadside restaurant, Evan found nothing unusual about the place. Even from the inside, it appeared to be just an ordinary establishment. However, when they reached the third and final floor of the building, both Evan and Sylvan immediately sensed something strange. Their gazes locked onto room number 302, which was situated in the middle of the corridor. They could feel faint energy fluctuations coming from inside. Blaze led them in front of the room but paused before opening the door. Pressing her lips together, she turned around and looked at Evan seriously. Are you sure what you told me last time is true? If you are playing any tricks this time, it will be dangerous for you. Evan raised an eyebrow at her serious expression but remained calm. Don't worry, sister. I am not someone who plays tricks on others. Blaze rolled her eyes at his blatant lie but said nothing. Instead, she turned back and pushed the door open. Chapter 1320 You Are Crazy, Part 1. As the door opened and Evan followed Blaze inside, he felt as if he had crossed some kind of barrier. It's a small dimensional space created using a very high-level formation. Once inside, we won't be able to leave without the owner's permission, Sylvan's voice rang in Evan's mind. However, Evan didn't stop and wthout any change in his expression, he continued following Blaze quietly. The moment Sylvan, who was behind Evan, stepped through the door, it shut behind them, and the space around them rippled slightly. As the ripples spread, the ordinary-looking room vanished, revealing a volcanic landscape. Rivers of lava flowed down from the jagged peaks of black, uneven mountains, and the sky of the dimension was a light orange hue with streaks of red mixed in. Even though Evan's body was far stronger than that of a rank 4 core evolver, he still began to sweat from the intense heat and couldn't help but shake his head. "You are quite cautious, huh?" he remarked lightly, turning his gaze toward the base of the volcanic mountain, from where the lava river was flowing. "It's better to be cautious when dealing with scheming people like you," Blaze responded flatly before striding in the direction Evan was looking. "What do you think?" Evan asked Sylvan. "Although the power of phoenixes will be greatly enhanced in an environment like this, where the fire element is overwhelmingly strong, it wouldn't be difficult for me to destroy this dimension if they try anything." Evan didn't ask anything else and leisurely followed Blaze, his gaze fixed on the back of the silhouette of an old man sitting at the edge of the lava river. The old man was sipping lava, or something that looked like lava, from an elegant teacup. Back on Earth, this old man could make a fortune drinking lava in a roadside show, Evan mused, eyeing the gray-haired elder with amusement. Since their arrival, the old man hadn't bothered to turn around, acting as if their presence was completely beneath his notice. Instead, he continued staring at the flowing lava, sipping leisurely from his cup. Seeing this pretentious attitude, Evan couldn't help but sneer inwardly. This old man just used his spiritual senses to carefully scan my body for anything dangerous, yet now he is pretending to be some master who doesn't care about anything, Evan thought to himself and had an urge to fire a few rocket launchers at him just to see if he could still keep up the act. "Uncle, they are here," Blaze said respectfully once they were just 10 meters away from the old man. Hearing Blaze, the old man nodded calmly and continued to stare at the lava river, not saying a word. Blaze, in turn, remained silent, standing with an equally respectful expression. Evan's eye twitched slightly. He knew exactly what this old man was trying to do, creating pressure by maintaining this overbearing silence. If they had truly been rank 3 core evolvers, Evan and Sylvan would have likely felt overwhelmed by the presence of a peak rank 5 core evolver. However, Sylvan was a rank 6 core evolver, and not just that, he was very close to reaching mid-level rank 6. Facing a rank 5 core evolver was completely meaningless to him. As for Evan, he had fought against the progenitor of shadow dragons for 10 full years, so facing this old man didn't faze him in the slightest. When the elder still didn't say anything after a full minute, Evan sighed inwardly. Without a word, he took out a bed from his storage ring. Casually, he laid down on it, closed his eyes, and instantly fell asleep. Blaze was stunned. Although Evan had changed his appearance and now looked like a lazy slacker, she hadn't actually thought he would go as far as falling asleep, especially in front of her uncle, who was faintly releasing his rank 5 aura. She stiffly turned to look at Sylvan and found him eyeing everything in the dimension with his crooked, narrowed eyes, as if he wanted to steal every last thing in sight. Ashivor, the old man, was also momentarily stunned when Evan pulled out a bed and fell asleep. The sip of lava-like liquid he was about to take paused midair. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. A lazy-looking young man was sleeping soundly on a bed in the middle of the scorched volcanic land. A crooked old man was greedily surveying his surroundings, as if ready to loot everything he laid eyes on. And a dignified elder was left wondering what the hell was happening. Ashivor, still not turning his head, used his spiritual senses to take a closer look. Did the pressure I released scare this brat so badly that he fainted from fear? But when he saw Evan's completely relaxed, peaceful sleeping face, he knew that couldn't be the case. Ahem. He cleared his throat loudly, trying to wake Evan up. No reaction. Frowning, Ashivor coughed a few more times, increasing his intensity each time. Still, nothing. Blaze. She looked at the unfazed sleeper and felt a sudden headache coming on. Even though she had only met her cheap brother a few times, she was completely certain that he was doing this deliberately because of the pretentious act her uncle had put earlier. What a mad bastard. She couldn't help but think that if she were in Evan's position, Facing a rank 5 core evolver, she wouldn't dare to act so recklessly. Seeing her uncle's face growing darker by the second, she hurriedly walked over to Evan. "Hey, wake up already," she shook him lightly, ready to throw him off the bed if necessary. However, before she could do so, Evan opened his eyes and sat up, rubbing them sleepily. "Has your uncle finished the lava he was drinking?" he asked with a yawn. Blaze's expression froze. She hesitantly glanced at her uncle from the corner of her eye, only to see his stiffened face. "That is not lava," she said, struggling to keep a straight face. "It's fire essence he is drinking." "Oh," Evan nodded